Hey guys, Dr. Who's here with a fantastic fanfic written by Karijo called Reading Rainbow. This is one of the most creative fanfictions I've ever read, and I hope you guys enjoy it just as much as I did. Links to the art and the fanfiction are in the description, so read along if you want to, but without wasting any more time, let's get into it. Rainbow Dash tore through the sky, flying as fast as her wings could take her. Come on, hurry up! Pain shot down her wing, but she ignored it. Her friend was more important. The Ponyville hospital appeared on the horizon, quickly growing to meet her. Within seconds she weaved through the streets and reached the outskirts of town where the enormous building awaited. Gliding just under the hospital's awning, she burst through the double doors and tumbled into an ungraceful heap on the floor. The receptionist behind the counter jumped from her seat, more from shock than anything else. She rushed over to help, but nearly leapt out of her skin when Rainbow Dash lunged at her and pinned her to the counter. "Where is she?" Rainbow Dash yelled, panting heavily. The mare pointed a shaky hoof to the door behind herself. Fifth door on the left," she managed to squeak. In an instant, Rainbow Dash was through the door in a whirlwind of rainbows and paperwork. She skidded to a halt outside room number 5 and bucked the door in. "All right, who did it?" she yelled as she leapt across the threshold. "Who hurt Twilight?" She shadowboxed the stuffy hospital air. "Let me at him!" "Rain," Applejack said. "I mean it! I'll kick their flank!" I'll teach him not to mess with my friends! Rainbow!" Rainbow Dash stopped and stared at Applejack. "Twilight's fine, Rainbow," Applejack said. "No pony hurt her. There's no need to get all up about it." "Rainbow Dash isn't getting up, silly. She's already standing!" Pinkie Pie exclaimed, jumping up and down. "Applejack's quite right," Rarity chimed in from the bedside. "There's no need to get so worried over a little injury like this." "What? Little?" Rainbow Dash repeated, looking between her and Twilight, who was propped up in bed. "What do you mean, little?" She pointed a hoof at Twilight. "She can't even see with those bandages over her eyes. What happened? Fluttershy made it sound like an emergency." The sound of wheezing echoed in from the hallway as Fluttershy stumbled in, sweating profusely. "I found her," she said between gasps before collapsing to the floor. "Oh dear," Rarity muttered, levitating a glass of water from the nightstand and trotting over to help. Rainbow Dash ignored the scene and walked to the bedside to put a hoof on her friend's shoulder. "Hey Twilight," she said softly. "How you doing? You alright?" Twilight gave her a friendly smile. "Hey Rainbow. As you can probably see, I've been better. But I think I'll be fine." She cast a sightless gaze down at the doll resting between her forehoof and side and gave it a gentle shake. "Smarty Pants will take care of me. It was just one too many books is all." "One too many books is right," said a voice from behind. Rainbow Dash turned to see a unicorn stallion looking up from a levitating clipboard. Fixing that split sight spell you used was a little trickier than it should have been, but I believe we've avoided any lasting damage. Though I still don't understand why you would want to read more than one book at a time in the first place. "Heh, you don't know Twilight," Rainbow Dash replied, ruffling her friend's mane. I guess not," the doctor said. "But I guess you're doing pretty well, Rainbow Dash. Not going too hard on your wing, are you?" She looked away, laughing weakly. Of course not, Doc. Why would I?" she said quickly with a suspicious smile. He raised an eyebrow. "Anyway, Miss Sparkle, even though we've reverted your eyesight to normal, you're going to have to stay here and wear those bandages for a few weeks so your eyes readjust properly." Twilight's smile faded. Her shoulders slouched and her head fell with them. "A few weeks?" the others echoed. "But if Twilight's stuck in here, then who's going to run the library?" Applejack asked. "Don't worry about that, Applejack," Twilight said. I'm sure Spike can take care of things while I'm here. I just wish I didn't have to be." She sank into the bedsheets and rolled over. "Cheer up, Twilight," Rarity said. "Staying in a hospital can't be that bad." "Yeah!" Pinkie Pie yelled. "I bet there's loads of super duper extra spectacular fun stuff you could do. Like blow up balloons and plan lots of parties, and eat lots of food and sing to all the other ponies, and then eat some more, and then have wheelchair races, and..." Her eyes widened as the idea washed over her. "Hey, can I stay in the hospital too?" she asked the doctor with a beaming smile. He glared at her in annoyance. Twilight perked up. "You're right. I can do this. I'll just curl up with my favorite book and..." She slumped back down with a groan. A nurse poked her head in the door. "Doctor, We need your help in room 12. He thinks some pony's stealing his slippers again. The doctor sighed heavily and rubbed his temple. I'll be right there. He turned to address every pony in the room. All right, Miss Sparkle needs her rest, and visiting hours ends in a few minutes, so I'll have to ask you all to say goodbye. You can come see her in the morning. They all said their farewells and exited the room, but Rainbow Dash stopped in the doorway to look back at her friend. Empathy and guilt built in her stomach. Twilight looked terrible. She couldn't leave her hair alone, not like that. She had to do something, but what? Suddenly an idea came to her and she turned to the doctor. Hey Doc, would it be alright if I stayed a little longer? I'm sorry, Rainbow Dash, he replied. Rules are rules. You can see her in the morning with your other friends. But Doc, just look at her. She can't even read with those bandages over her eyes. She'll go insane. I said I'm sorry, but no. He turned to leave, but she blocked his path. Hey, I'm not leaving her like that, she said, glaring at him. He seemed to consider her words before glancing over his shoulder at Twilight, who sat hunched over in bed. Her bandages were damp. Sighing, he looked back to Rainbow Dash. All right, you can stay. Just mind the other patients. All right, she yelled, jumping into the air. Thanks, Doc. Rainbow Dash was off in a blaze. She turned the corner and collided with the nurse pushing a book trolley. Ouch! She rubbed her head and gave the mare an apologetic smile. Heh, sorry. Grabbing one of the books strewn across the floor, she ran back to Twilight's room. Quietly, she opened the door and walked in. Twilight looked up. Hello? She called, rubbing her bandages. Rainbow Dash set the book down on the bed. Hey, Twilight! A smile formed on Twilight's face. Oh, hey, Rainbow! You came back? I thought the doctor said you had to leave. Heh. No pony's gonna stop me from being there for my friends when they need me, Rainbow Dash said as she pulled up a stool and sat down. You gave me a book to read when I was stuck in here. I thought I'd return the favor, she added with a smile. Rainbow, Twilight said, pointing to her bandages. I can't see, remember? Rainbow Dash looked at her as if that was the dumbest thing she could have possibly said. Duh. She picked up the book and opened it. Twilight heard the familiar sound of flipping paper and, with a tender smile, snuggled beneath the sheets. What book is it? Rainbow Dash checked the front cover. One Full Day, by Shel Silverhoof, she read. Ooh, I haven't read that book before, Twilight said. You haven't? Rainbow Dash asked. Twilight laughed. You say that like it surprises you. Yeah, because it does. Well, then why do you think I'm here in the first place? Rainbow Dash thought it over for a second. Because you're reading books? And why was I reading books? Rainbow Dash shrugged. It made sense. One Full Day, she repeated, looking back at the book in her hooves. She flipped to the first page of the story where an oddly stylized house peered up at her. She stared at it in confusion. Rainbow? Is something wrong? Twilight asked. Yeah, she replied, tilting the book from side to side and squinting at it, as if that would somehow improve her understanding. What's wrong with this house? This picture doesn't make any sense. Twilight laughed again. Well, maybe if you start reading it will. Rainbow Dash gave her a sour glance, but then positioned the book comfortably on her lap and cleared her throat. There once was a stallion who lived in a house that was more of a how or maybe an ouse, for his little old home was not one bit complete. 'Twas only he that lived on Halfway Street. See? I told you, Twilight interrupted, grinning triumphantly. Rainbow Dash glanced up from the book and grumbled before resuming. The building itself, as one would see, wasn't nearly as finished as he may decree. It had only 3 walls halfway around, and to only one part was a roof bound. His living room sat right in plain sight of any passers-by on any given night. His bedroom was lofted just 1 floor high, giving a view of the wonderful sky. On the inside wall there rested a clock, with only 6 numbers it'd tick but not talk. His bed halfway built in the corner snug, sat halfway made on a threadbare rug. The kitchen was chilly, cold as ice. Having half of a fridge paid its own price? Rainbow Dash raised an eyebrow. Who in the hay only owns half of a fridge? Twilight smiled. Rainbow, it's only part of the story. Yeah, fine. It makes sense, whatever, she replied with a wave of her hoof. Finding the bathroom was no simple task. Trying to use it, don't even ask. What? This is stupid. I'm going to go get another book. Rainbow, wait, Twilight said. Just keep reading. No, this book is totally uncool, she said, heading for the door. I'm going to find a daring do book. Rainbow Dash looked over her shoulder. Please? I really like it. Rainbow Dash wavered. She thought that the book sucked big time, but she was there for Twilight and no pony else. Sighing, she walked back to the stool. All right. Thanks. No problem, Twilight. She sat down on the stool again and picked up where she left off. Seeing this house, as one can easily tell, things became interesting when the rain fell, but despite these setbacks the stallion tread up halfway street toward his unfinished homestead. To the sun overhead the stallion did look, then back to the ground his head he shook. "'Tis almost time," he said, methinks, "to get to bed and get 20 winks." She looked up at Twilight. 20 winks? Twilight laughed. Think about it. Rainbow Dash stared at her blankly, gears churning. When it clicked, she let out a laugh and dove back into the book. He stepped off the road, which was halfway done, and wiped his forehead in the heat of the sun. Across the yard that grew halfway, he stepped where his key did stay. He lifted the mat that said only comb, and fitted the key and entered his home. Climbed the stairs every other he did, and into his room the stallion slid. He looked in the mirror cut straight down the middle, at the black and white mane that sat all in a twiddle. He glanced at his coat where two halves stood true, the strongest of hues, steel grey and dark blue. Closer he looked where eye bags did sit, under blue under green he threw a great fit. Oh, what a morn, what a work, what a day, the rest of it I shall sleep half the way. Onto his bed the stallion then rolled. He looked at the sun, who looked back bold. A face he did make, and then he did pout. He yelled at the sun, "Turn your light out!" The sun did Rainbow Dash squinted at the word. Out? She looked up at Twilight, puzzled. Twilight laughed at her mispronunciation. "I think you mean not." Oh. The sun did not a thing to comply. It merely sat in its spot in the sky. With a discontented grumble and an audible huff, the stallion rolled over. He had quite enough. Half of a bed at his side it was not, and a hole in his heart grew at the thought. A mirrorful of love was all he did want, and for all of his own to act as a font. With half of a sigh, to half slumber he fell. Just how he did so, one couldn't quite tell. Whatever he dreamed, he only half dreamt, for just half a day he had to preempt. The sun was soon gone, to the west it had slidden, the moon in its place, its power now hidden. He woke in the morn to a brand new day. He woke once again to work it halfway. "Wait!" Twilight interrupted again. "If he only slept half of a day at noon, then how is it morning?" Rainbow Dash glanced up at her. "And you were yelling at me for questioning the book?" Twilight's face blanked. She sank further under the covers with a blush and a smile. Rainbow Dash looked back to the book, a grin on her face. Rainbow Dash 1, Twilight too many. He brushed half his teeth and gave half a grin. Out the door down the road his day did begin. The sky was bright blue and the birds were a-chatter. What a fine day! There is nothing the matter. In the fields to his left many foals did play, but something caught his eye and he stopped all the way. Among all the foals that skimpered and scampered stood a fair mare whose mane was quite pampered. All the shades of true gold her coat truly gleamed, and in the warm sun violet eyes fully gleamed. He held his breath, not knowing what to do. Where had she come from? He had not a clue. He thought of his bed, then the hole in his heart. Then with a stroll toward the mare did he start. Crossing the field he felt very meek, but courage returned and bade him to speak. "My fair maiden, may I have a word? Allow me to speak, don't think me absurd." She stopped in her tracks and looked his way. Her beauty did steal his words to say. Lost in a trance he gave her a smile. Toothy and silly he stood there a while. Shaking his head he snapped from her spell. He spoke from the heart and he spoke quite well. "A form I think you mean ne'er," Twilight happily supplied. "It's a Shakespearean contraction used to remove excess syllables and keep a poem's meter in check, though this one seems to be in free verse." Rainbow Dash stared at her levelly, like she cared where it came from. You there?" Twilight asked. "Yeah," Rainbow Dash replied upon remembering her friend couldn't see. She smiled. It was just Twilight being Twilight. "A form ne'er so graceful, nor beauty so rare, straight from my chest my heart did it snare. And there from yours I do so desire to entwine you with love, your heart to acquire. How now, fair maiden, what do you say? May I try just once today? His little heart pitted, and he hoped that hers padded, but one look in her eyes and his dreams were shattered. She glanced at his coat and then at his mane, then at his eyes with a look of disdain. What happened to you? The pretty mare inquired. That style is silly, it's completely expired. I know not what you mean, disconcerted, ha! He said. She pointed to the curls on top of his head. You have a mane of some black and also some white. How are you able to sleep at night? Your wacky coat is dark blue and steel grey. It would easily drive any pony away. Don't think me rude, don't think me mean, but isn't it funny, only one eye of green? I'm sorry, Sir Stallion, you have spoken your word. I've allowed you to speak, and I think you absurd. With nay but a smile, she turned on a whim, dashing his hopes, his chances more slim. He returned to his house, fumes from his ears. It drove him quite mad, nearly drove him to tears. Silly, absurd, that's what she called me. Rainbow! I'll change how I look, I'll show her, she'll see. Rainbow! Twilight yelled. Rainbow Dash looked up. You're shouting. Oh. Heh, sorry. He galloped to the store and bought some red paint. At such brilliant crimson any mare would sure faint. His mane did he dye the sleekest of black, a masterful plan immune to all flack. The optometrist sold him but one single lens, green to complement the other two trends. Into his mirror the stallion didn't glance. Will she reject me now? Ha! Not a chance. He went to the field to find her again. Boldly he approached her and gave her a grin. My fair maiden, may I have a word? Allow me to speak, don't think me absurd. My hair is all black, 'tis no longer white, 'tis no more of a threat in the middle of night. Wacky no more is my coat blue and grey, 'twill no longer drive any pony away. I don't think you rude, I don't think you mean, for you'll change your mind with two eyes of green. How now, fair maiden, what do you say? May I try once more today? The beautiful mare, after a glance, said, All right, good sir, I'll give you a chance. His face in a whirl by a grin it was swept, but calm did he stay, his composure he kept. My house is just there, 'tis not a great hike, 'tis quite a fine place that I think you will like. Up halfway street the pair of them strode, up halfway street toward his humble abode. Crossing the yard he opened the door, but she gave him a look as if hoping for more. Oh, my Sir Stallion, you call this a house? It is more of a hoe, or maybe an ouse. Only 3 walls round is your little homestead, and to only one part is there a roof overhead. Your living room here is right in plain view of the street that you're on, only a problem of few. Your bedroom does hang just 1 floor above, 'tis too close to death with one simple shove. If I lived in this place, my work would come knocking, for I would not wake to a clock that's not talking. Your bed, as it seems, is a scare, I confess. Halfway built, halfway made, 'tis quite a mess. Your kitchen is cold, chills right to the bone, not half of a fridge would I ever own. Rainbow Dash looked up at Twilight with a grin. I told you having half of a fridge was stupid. Smiling, Twilight sighed. Just keep reading. The bathroom is hidden, it is try to find. The thought of using it is... never mind. I still don't get it, Rainbow Dash said. Twilight face-hoofed and started to explain, but was cut off by Rainbow Dash's fervent reading. I'm sorry, Sir Stallion, you have spoken your word. I've allowed you to speak, and I think you absurd. She turned then to leave, bidding good day, but try as he might, he had nothing to say. He sat there and thought, he started to stew. A light bulb went off, and he knew what to do. He set straight to work, he worked in a flurry. He worked with much speed, he was in quite a hurry. In all of his haste he made lots of noise, but at the end of it all he stood with great poise? Rainbow Dash looked up, and Twilight nodded. Poise! Unto his home the stallion didn't glance. Will she reject me now? Ha! Not a chance. He went to the field to find her again. Boldly he approached her and gave her a grin. My fair maiden, may I have a word? Allow me to speak, don't think me absurd. Not an hour ago I showed you my house. You called not only a hoe, but also an ouse. Come here with me, just turn your fair head. Look, you shall see our roof overhead. My living room there, once in plain view. Who can see from the street? Please name a few. My bedroom that's still just 1 floor above is safe for a mare from one simple shove. Your work here will no longer come knocking, for my clock it did tick and now also is talking. A scare, did you say, was my bed, please confess? Fully built, fully made, 'tis no longer a mess. The kitchen that once chilled right to the bone, no more, no less, 1 whole fridge does it own. My bathroom that hid, that was so hard to find, your queries on usage, pay never mind. Rainbow Dash's eyes widened. Whoa! She flipped back a page and scanned through the prose.
He did all that in an hour? It's just a story, Rainbow Dash, Twilight said, smiling. Oh yeah, right. How now, fair maiden, what do you say? May I try once more today? The beautiful mare, after a glance, said, All right, good sir, I'll give you a chance. A wonderful day they spent in the town, but all of the while the mare wore a frown. What is the matter? The stallion asked, with a look on her face of pure flabbergast! Twilight finished for her, clapping her hooves. Gesundheit. Twilight's face twisted in confusion, but Rainbow Dash resumed the story without noticing. I'm sorry, Sir Stallion, I'm unsure what to say. There's something still wrong, for an answer I pray. You've changed how you look, and your house is now true, but what you've become, it just isn't you. A soft apology escaped the fair mare, and the stallion sat stunned, full of despair. He stumbled on home to his fully built house, and changed it all back to a how or an ouse. He washed all the black right out of his mane, then all of the crimson out of his frame. He removed the green lens, bidding symmetry farewell, and then with a sigh into depression he fell. He went for a walk in the mid of the day, and during his walk by the field he did stray. Oh my, Sir Stallion, are you all right? That look on your face, it gives such a fright. He raised up his head and saw the fair mare, with a sorrowful guilt he simply must share. I'm sorry, fair maiden, for wasting your time. I see I'm not good enough. To try was a crime. He lowered his head and walked gloomily by. At such great sadness she did nearly cry. You did all that you have just to express, all that you felt you only tried to impress. With you nothing's wrong, there is nothing silly, but the age that I've acted was that of a filly. After all this time I can plainly see, not you, 'twas I, the absurd one was me. Sorrowfully and sadly she looked to the ground, then slowly her eyes to his came around. Shyly a smile formed in her face, and after the smile a laugh gave it chase. This trial I now know isn't your fault, and strongly do I persistence exalt. But how now, Sir Stallion, what do you say? May I try just once today? The rest of the day, till when the sun set, they laughed and they played like best friends long met. He acted himself, no fake-cade? Hey, Twilight! How do you pronounce this squiggly C thing? She looked at her friend who lay quietly in bed. Twilight held Smarty Pants close, sleeping soundly. Rainbow Dash smiled, and she continued the story in a hushed whisper. He acted himself, no fake-cade did he play, and with naught but a smile at his side did she stay. And then on from hers, as he so desired, he entwined her with love, her heart he acquired. His halfway built home is still on that street, 'tis a home meant for two, and his house is complete. Rainbow Dash closed the book and, sighing, looked to her friend. The moon bathed her in its silvery glow. Smiling, Rainbow Dash laid the book on the nightstand and quietly stood to close the curtains. The room now dark, she tip-hooved to the door. She opened it and crossed the threshold before looking back. The light from the hallway fell upon her friend, and Rainbow Dash couldn't help but smile. As nerdy as she was, Twilight was adorable when she slept. She peeked her head in to whisper one last word as she closed the door. Good night. The door shut with a tiny click, and after another sigh, Rainbow Dash walked to the exit. With the receptionist out for the night, the hum of the fluorescent lights alone bid her farewell. The cold night air welcomed her outside as she spread her wings to take flight for home. While she flew, her back complained, sore from sitting upright in that stool for so long, but she couldn't help her sense of contentment. She did it for Twilight, and that's all that mattered. Below, Ponyville drifted quietly into collective slumber. Little windows flickered out as the residents of town retired to bed. A yawn escaped her and she rubbed the glaze from her eyes. She couldn't agree more, it had been a long day. The town continued to fall into darkness as its lights went out one by one. It was kind of fun to watch Ponyville shut down for the night. All those ponies going to bed while she flew solitary above was something Rainbow Dash had never experienced. While odd, it was a good feeling, one she had only Twilight to thank for. As she smiled at that thought, her eyes wandered toward the centre of town, where something caught her attention. A large tree remained aglow like a beacon in the night. Rainbow Dash grinned. She shrugged off her drowsiness and banked downwards toward the tree. Sleep could wait. She had a month's worth of books to check out. So what did you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. I personally thought that the poem was absolutely fantastic. The author says he wrote it by himself, and for that I give him incredible props. An insanely talented writer. Anyway, seeing as you made it to the end of the video, you're the people I specifically want to know what kind of fanfics you'd like to hear. So do you like one-offs like this one? Or do you want me to try doing more lengthy or even epic long adventure fanfic readings? I'd really like to know what kind of stuff you guys would like to hear. So until next time, laters.